The wind howled across the plains like it remembered things men had long tried to forget. Dust scratched against Beau McCrae's face as he stumbled off his horse, knees buckling just shy of a mesquite log where a dying fire gave off the ghost of warmth. He fell to one side, ribs screaming, breath caught somewhere between pain and weariness. His hands trembled as he reached for his canteen, only to find it dry. Again, the sun had already gone down, but the heat clung to him like guilt. He wasn't sure which was worse, thirst or the feeling of being cast off yet again. They'd said it like a sentence, not a warning. You got no roots, Beau, no name worth speaking, no claim to a thing. And maybe they were right. Out there, everything stretched wide and empty, like the world had turned its back, until he saw it. A curl of smoke from behind a hillock, soft and gray as breath on a window pane. His horse whinnied low behind him as he climbed over the rise, boots dragging, ribs stabbing with each breath. Nestled beneath wind-blasted oaks was a shack, half sunken, nearly camouflaged by the dry grass. The roof sagged like an old man's spine, and yet the smoke puffed steady from the crooked chimney. Beau raised a hand, knocking twice on the worn wood. A pause. Then a call from inside, wet, rasping, close. He waited. Nothing. A second knock. Still nothing. He pushed the door open slow, his hat clenched in hand, ready to apologize to whoever might be dying on the other side. Inside, dim yellow light from an oil lamp flickered against mud-plaster walls. The air was thick with pine smoke and illness. She sat hunched in a rocker, quilt pulled to her chin, a double barrel resting across her lap. "Don't steal," she said, voice dry as the dust on his coat. "I ain't," Beau whispered, his voice barely more than breath. "Just need to warm my bones a spell." She didn't lift the gun, didn't lower it either, just coughed again and turned her eyes back to the fire. He stepped inside like a man entering a church. He collapsed near the hearth. The stew smelled of roots and something boiled too long, but Beau ate when she handed him a bowl. They didn't talk. Words felt too sharp for the room. She watched him over the rim of her cup, eyes narrow, shoulders stiff beneath the shawl. Her hands, though pale and cracked, didn't tremble as she poured him water. He noticed. He chewed slow, listening to the wind tickle through the cracks in the walls. Her eyes reminded him of the desert after rain, something bruised, something waiting. She looked like a woman who hadn't had company in years. He felt like a man who'd forgotten how to be one. The next morning, he rose with the sun crawling through the wood slats. She was already outside, sitting on a stump, coughing into a cloth he could see was speckled with red. He approached with his hands out. "I can mend the fence. Fix that corner near the goat pen." In return for staying a while, he offered, voice low. She didn't look at him at first. When she did, her mouth pulled into something like a smirk. "Land don't need your help. It's mine." Beau blinked. A woman owning land. That alone was enough to pause a man. But it wasn't the words that stung. It was the truth beneath them. He'd spent too long being seen as someone who took, not gave. He nodded, stepping back. "I meant no disrespect." She looked away, but her voice softened. "No one's meant anything real to me in a long time." Beau didn't respond. He just picked up a bucket and fetched water anyway. Later, he tried splitting firewood, pushing past the pain in his ribs. The first log cracked clean. The second, less so. By the fourth, the world spun. He dropped to one knee, clutching his side, breath caught sharp in his throat. She watched from the doorway, didn't rush to him, didn't mock him either, just stood there in her thin shawl, hair wild as dry flame around her face, eyes unreadable. When he came to, the sky was dark, and a wet cloth rested on his brow. The fire cracked nearby, and the shotgun was gone. She sat by his side, stitching something by lamplight. They didn't speak, but her hands moved steady. That night, something small and silent shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but something like it. Something gentler than pride, older than shame. Something that tasted a little like grace. The next morning came soft, wrapped in a hush of wind brushing the eaves. Beau rose early and stoked the coals back to life, careful not to clatter the tin kettle. He made coffee the way he liked it, strong, bitter, no ceremony. When he offered her the first cup, she took it with a nod, no words exchanged. But she drank it all, and that was something. The day stretched long and lean. He mended the fence post with wire he found coiled behind the barn. She swept the dust from the floorboards like she was brushing ghosts back into the corners. He patched the window with oilcloth. She boiled onions and greens into a thin stew. They didn't talk, but their movements threaded into each other, like the rhythm of two people who'd been alone so long they forgot they needed rhythm at all. When Bo went to fetch kindling behind the shack, he found an old coat hanging on a peg, thick wool, faded blue, with worn leather at the cuffs. He ran his fingers across it, half expecting a voice to call out from the shadows. That night, he found her folding that very coat by the fire, slow and deliberate, like her hands were remembering a body no longer there. Her shoulders trembled, but her face held still. "Your husband?" he asked, voice a crack in the silence. She shook her head, setting the coat aside. "Brother, Nate, rode with the Texas irregulars. Came back with dreams. Thought we'd build something here." Her eyes grew distant. "A cattleman tried to fence in our well. Nate stood up to him. Got shot in the back. Bo didn't say sorry. He'd buried too many men to believe in the weight of that word. He just nodded, and that seemed to be enough. Later, while she unwrapped his bandage to rewrap his ribs, her fingers brushed a long, silver scar that ran down his side. She paused, eyes flicking up to his. "Got whipped," he said, "back in Abilene. Took bread from a man's wagon. Wasn't mine, and he caught me. Tied me to a post and let the town have a turn. She didn't pull away, didn't offer pity, just pressed the cloth firm and tied the knot clean. You hungry now?" He met her eyes, steady, always. The next afternoon, dust trailed across the hills. A rider approached, clean shirt, eyes too bright. She met him on the porch, Bo lingering inside the door's shadow. The man tipped his hat, but didn't smile. "Willa, word is you've taken in company." "Company's none of your concern, Caleb," she replied. "A woman alone, keeping a drifter under her roof?" "Tongues a wag," he said, not cruelly, just plainly. Bo stepped outside then, arms folded, face unreadable. Caleb's eyes narrowed, a preacher's son scenting sin. "Men like that bring rot," he muttered. Bo didn't defend himself. He knew better. He'd heard worse in better towns. When the dust on the rider's horse had settled, Bo walked back inside, jaw tight. Willa didn't say anything. She went back to her stitching. He didn't ask her to speak on his behalf. She didn't offer. That night, Bo sat beside the stove in silence, staring at his boots like they might speak. He hadn't eaten. Wasn't sure he could. But then, a warm bowl appeared beside him. Not handed, just placed, like she was giving it to the space between them. He looked up. She was already walking away. "Thank you," he called after her. She paused at the doorway, hand on the frame. "You're welcome, for whatever you're running from." Sleep came slow. He lay on the cot, the stew sitting warm in his belly, his ribs throbbing less. The wind whispered through the slats like a hymn. Willa stood in the doorway, silhouetted by lamplight. She watched him, quiet, one hand resting on the side table near his. Her fingers inched forward, almost grazing his knuckles. She stopped and turned back to her room. They weren't ready, but something in the silence said, someday, maybe. The wind curled through the valley like a warning, low and rising. The sky bruised dark above the hills, thick with the weight of rain not yet fallen. Bo moved from shutter to shutter, tying slats closed, bracing board with rope, eyes scanning the horizon like a man expecting more than just weather. Willa sat by the fire, wrapped in a quilt too thin for how her cough had worsened. Her breath came in stutters now, like her lungs had forgotten how to trust the air. Still, when she spoke, it was clear. They'll be coming today. Bo paused, hands resting on the window frame. She looked up, calm in the face of the storm. "Caleb will bring men. He's got that deed. Says mine's no good. Women ain't allowed to own land in this county, he says." Bo didn't answer. He just nodded once and left the room. Out in the lean-to barn, he saddled a mule, packed provisions, not to flee, but to prepare. He oiled the tools, sharpened a hoe he'd found behind the barn. Not a weapon, just something sturdy, something honest. Willa watched from the porch, wrapped in that quilt, her eyes tracing the storm and the man who never asked her to fight alone. "You don't have to stay," she said, her voice half broken, half proud. He cinched the saddle tight, checked the straps again. "I know," he said. By dusk, the men came. 3 riders, 1 wagon. Caleb out front, wearing righteousness like armor. Willa Hargrove, he called from the edge of the yard. "You're squatting on land that ain't yours by law. Time to leave." Bo stepped forward first. No gun, no threat, just his body between them and her. "She ain't going anywhere," he said, voice steady, rain beginning to spit at the brim of his hat. "This ain't your fight, cowboy," Caleb sneered. "You got no stake here." Bo's eyes stayed calm. "I do now." Behind him, Willa stepped outside. Her legs trembled, but she stood tall, coughing once into her sleeve, then holding high a folded paper. "My brother filed proper with Judge Adderley in San Angelo. Sealed and witnessed," she said, voice firm despite the crackle in her throat. "You don't own this place." "I do." Caleb's smirk faltered. The youngest of his men looked uneasy. Bo took another step forward. "You want to test it, you'll have to kill me first. But I reckon even you know what blood costs in a town this small." Lightning cracked behind them. Thunder rolled slow across the hills. Caleb stared at Bo, then Willa, then the seal on the paper. He turned his horse. "This ain't over." Bo didn't move until their silhouettes vanished behind the hill, swallowed by the storm. Only then did he let the tension slide from his shoulders, breath leaving in one long exhale. The rain came down hard after that, cleansing, almost holy. They sat by the fire that night, neither saying much. Willa's hands were wrapped around a tin cup of warm broth. Bo rested near the hearth, ribs still healing, but something inside him finally settled. She reached across the wormwood between them, laying her hand over his. "You didn't have to stay," she said again, but quieter this time. He looked at her, eyes softened. "Didn't know I'd find home here," he said. "But I did." They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full. Out in the West, roots don't come from blood or land. Sometimes they come from kindness left at a doorstep, from strangers who stayed, and from a woman who owned the earth under your boots, and the strength to let you belong to it.